Shalom. Before I begin, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Ruach Kodash. I'd like to say double honors to my teachers, the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, the men whom I've learned this truth from. And I'd also like to say Shalom and salutations to the brothers that are out there of the hopeful elect that are preaching this word in truth and sincerity. Alright, so I'm the brother Shaquat from the branch of Great Millstone, Montreal. Back with another in transit lesson. Alright, and this lesson that I'm going to be getting into today, it's going to be going into, something that I was meditating on, right? And that's basically, not being afraid to be yourself in the truth, right? And the reason why, I was meditating on that, and, some thoughts that came to mind was that, by you doing that, right? And this is something that I dealt with, right? By you basically withholding your spirit back, right? It can hinder particular things, man. Right? It can hinder a flow. Because you're scared to be yourself. You might be afraid of what somebody might think of you. Somebody might look at you and be like, you're doing too, right? And I also say that, to say that, because you gotta, this, how do I want to phrase this? You could be yourself, but it has to be, you have to understand the limitations, right? Because, for example, you might be a brother that's, that likes laughing, laughing a lot, as, always, a jolly spirit, right? But you can't always be that in particular scenarios and situations, right? You can't let that side, that your spirit spill out in a serious situation like that, you can't laugh at a serious, so just basically being yourself, but understanding when to, okay, let me not do this right now, let me not do this, let me not act like this at this moment because it's a serious moment, so on and so forth, man. Right? You might be a brother that's quiet, that doesn't like to talk too much, but this, there's times where you need to talk, right? There's that doesn't mean that I'm just gonna shut down, I'm gonna be quiet all the time, I'm gonna be my little shell. No, man. Right? Because by you doing that, you can miss out on particular opportunities, man. You won't communicate with people. You will lack communication, and that's important, right? In your day-to-day, right? And especially in the truth, that could lead to being bashful, right? And I think one of the similar words for the definition of the word bashful is weak and timid, right? So you're just scared, in other words, right? Because you're probably afraid of what, if I say this, this person might, that spirit, man, versus somebody that knows when to communicate and say particular things, be bold at a particular time, right? Talk to people, because, communication can actually lead to opportunities, right? You having a good convo with somebody could actually lead to them being like, this guy's not so shabby, right? So things like that, right? And the Lord knew what he was doing, calling you into the truth. He knew who you were as a person. He knew your personality. He knew your spirit, right? He knew what he was doing, So So you thinking too little of yourself, and basically not being yourself, because that's what not being yourself is, right? Basically belittling, thinking low of yourself, right? By you doing that, you're taking away from what the Lord sees in you, man. Because the Lord knows what he's doing by calling the men who he called into the truth, right? What's an example? Moses, right? The Lord knew what he was doing, choosing Moses to be who he was, and the lot that was given him, right? Even though Moses thought like, yo, me, I can't really, my speech is slow, but Moses thought like, yo, are you sure it's me? Like, my speech, I could barely fill a sentence, but nah, man, the Lord saw something in Moses. He, regardless of his speech impediment, right? His lack of being able to his lack of eloquency, man, right? The Lord saw something in Moses overall that made him fit for his lot, right? So Moses couldn't be like, yo, fuck, I'm not really good at, I'm not the best talker, so I'm just gonna shut down, I'm just gonna shut down and be in my little comfortable corner where I'm all alone. Nah, man. Right? Because it goes back to the point, the Lord knows what he's doing, man. He knows who he's calling into the truth. He knows why he's calling them into the truth. He knows the reasons to things. Right? So you not being afraid to be yourself is actually a good thing. Because regardless of your character traits that you have, it's not, nobody else could be like, yo, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Because the Lord saw fit for you to be in the truth, right? For his purpose. Regardless of the character traits you think that, might be negative, which are probably not, right? So yeah, and the scriptures also say in the book of Psalms, right? King David said, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. So the Lord made each and every individual that he called into the truth a specific way, diverse, diverse and special, right? Because that's what makes something precious, is that it's not mimicked, it's not the same as something else, right? But you might have similar spirits in the truth, right? Similar brothers that are somewhat of the same, but they still have their differences about them, and that's what makes it unique and cool, man. The fact that it's different, things are different. So you being yourself is a good thing, man, right? And that's also to say that, yo, you got to be yourself in measure, like that point I made earlier. There's still things, and there's still a conduct that you have to carry yourself by. There's still morals that you have to live by, right? And not just be all like I said earlier, right? A brother that's always laughing, you can't always be that, all the time. But the majority of the time you could be that, because majority of the situations are not always serious. It's like they're not always serious. They're not always, situations where you need to be serious. So the majority of the time you can be yourself, man. You can laugh, And so what if it offends a brother, if not offends a brother, but if somebody looks at it like, yo, but that's me. Like, you can't change yourself, right? It's up to that person to adjust, And that's the beauty of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, man. He made everybody different, everybody for their purpose, right? Hey, man, so yeah, that's pretty much it. Lord willing, this lesson was edifying to the elect and comforting. And made sense, through the spirit of power of Yahweh Shema Shai. My thoughts were, brought out, edifying, because that's what it's all about. As long as it's edifying and it comforts somebody, it's all right, Hey, and even something that I'm dealing with too is like, rushing in my lessons. Like, I don't have to rush, right? You can take your time, bro. You can take your time framing your thought. You can take your time speaking. There's nothing wrong with that, man. There's no rush. Just slow down and think it through, right? Because it might not be your spirit to just talk and be able to talk back to back to fill the gap. Sometimes you don't gotta fill the gap, right? Because even I watched the elder Apostle Tahar's videos, and they're edifying, and he's not always just talking the whole video, right? You might have pockets of where there's a bit of silence in the video, and there's nothing wrong with that, because he's framing his thoughts. He's looking for a precept, so on and so. He's looking for the spirit to hit him, right? And that's the thing. The spirit is not always going to be on you, man. But it's on and off, right? And that's also goes back to another point that the elder Apostle Tahar made, is that, like, you gotta basically chase the spirit, chase the spirit. And what he means by that is like, the spirit might not be on you, but you turn on the camera anyways, you press record, and then you just like, you just see what happens, and eventually, out of nowhere, you'll see the spirit bang hits you with all these precepts, all these ideas, and that's you chasing the spirit. You're waiting for it to basically hit you, and that's how it works, right? That's what the spirit is. Like the scriptures say, the wind bloweth where you don't know where it comes from, where it's gonna go, where it ends up. It's just there, and then one moment it's not, right? And that's what it is, bro. And that's the beauty of it. It's not, you can't like ABC it. You can't ABC 1 2 3 it. It's just like A Z W G H. Like it's random. But when it's there, it's powerful, right? So yeah, man. Right? So hey, that's pretty much all I had to say. Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect and exhorting and comforting. I want to say, call Halayimla, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rahak Kodash. Double honors to my teachers, the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, the men whom I've learned this truth from, and shalom and salutations to the elect.